Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Pretty cool Studio AK video there. Welcome to the panels here at Playgrounds. This is pretty cool. We're in the middle of an unbelievably ambitious run that Playgrounds has put on. I am perpetually in awe of them, knowing how difficult it is to pull off an event like this, and it's the first time Playgrounds is doing it online. Thank you all. I know you guys, many of you have been with us all day. Thank you for joining us here, keeping an active chat. We're going to keep this going. We got a fun panel right now on the future of technology and creativity. And I am joined by several of my favorite gentlemen. To my, I think it's that way, is James Kuda, who of course is the CEO of Procreate, who so generously is the spotlight sponsor here of this event. Shout out to Nathan Clay, also from Procreate in the chat right there. And above me is Jama Jurabayev. And of course, y'all know Jama, concept artist, worked on everything from the Star Wars movies to Jurassic Park. He's got a massive online following his tutorials, and he gives out all sorts of artistic packs that we'll get to talk about. And then he's, of course, also one of the that's not the right word, front runners, spokesman of VR in concept art. So we'll get to talk a fair amount about that too. And then in that corner over there is my good buddy, Maxx Burman. Maxx is a art director and concept artist. He was on Iron Man at 18 years old. He art directed the opening titles of Westworld and painted the wall in Game of Thrones, and worked on the Terminator. He has done pretty much every big movie and video game of the last decade. And he is, very lucky for me, my business partner at Kibash 3D. And I am Banks, and here we go. So as we dive into this, please, anyone at any time, join in the chat, talk to each other within there, and then I'll also be following along so that I can pick some questions here that I can throw at these guys. Long-winded way of saying what's up. How y'all doing?
Yeah, good, man.
I mean, James, let's start there. It's what, 4 o'clock in the morning in Tasmania?
Yeah, 4:45. So, just my usual start in the morning. Fine.
Yeah, you've already had a run.
Yeah, been to the beach, Yeah.
Nice. And Jama, you're joining us all the way from London, huh?
Yeah. It's evening time here. It's all good. Staying locked in for almost 4 weeks now, which is not unusual for me because as a freelancer, I've been on this quarantine for quite a few years. So
not too much has shifted. Well, I mean, you do though keep one of the most busy travel schedules of anyone in the business, I think.
Well, yeah, last year was packed. My calendar reminded me that I visited 57 cities last year. And this year he reminded me that I walked just 2 miles because it was basically me walking down to have some food and walking up to work. So
just one flight of stairs is your whole block.
Yeah, that's true.
And you, Maxwell, you're just down the street. You're in Los Angeles.
Yes, sir.
How's the weather?
It's sunny. It's nice.
Beautiful. Crazy stuff. Thinking how many different time zones are in this chat here. And speaking of the chat too, let's do a quick roll call. Would y'all please tell us what country you guys are in, and throw it in there so we know who all is here. Pretty cool to have such a global event, and big shout outs to Playgrounds for putting it on, and also to Spirited On and Firestarter, who are sponsoring this. And Spirited Is, if y'all don't know what Firestarter Magazine is, it was one of the it is the community magazine of this space, and Spirited is the editor and creator of that. He works so hard to bring this community together. He's traveling all over to all the events usually, and he's always putting on these really cool panels. So I'm very lucky to call him my friend, as I know we all are, and pumped to see him in the chat. So James, let's I want to talk about the future of technology and creativity, obviously, as the prompt so aptly serves. But let's first talk a little bit about where we currently are today and what sort of things we're seeing. Can you talk just a bit about the landscape of Procreate and where you guys are now, and how how you built the unbelievable software and community that you have.
Yeah. I still think we're at the beginning. Like if you look at what happened in the 80s with the advent of, the desktop computer, as soon as we had enough technology like GPUs, CPUs to the point where they could push some serious pixels around, we started, thinking, oh, maybe we could paint with this, hooking up some tablets and starting to mimic the real world, right? Like, so a lot of the software back then was kind of a skeuomorphic take on the tools. What's interesting now is that we still haven't really, gone and explored what digital is capable of. There's still so much to explore with digital. What is a digital brush? What is that medium of the digital canvas? What can it really do? And I still think there's so much room, so much possibility in that space. Once we move away from just like, let's replicate what's been done, let's replicate a watercolor or an oil paint or whatever. What's next? That's the kind of question that keeps driving us. And if you look at like some of the stuff we've done, like Streamline, for instance, where we're predicting where the stroke is going when people are moving with, calligraphy, predicting where it's going and then kind of smoothing out those lines. That's only possible in digital. You know what I mean? So there's still so much room to go. And I think, once the industry as a whole kind of, we needed to kind of stand on the shoulders of what had been done before with traditional media. But man, there's so much more to go. So much more to go.
It's so exciting to hear. I don't think I appropriately preface what Procreate is. If y'all don't know, Procreate is the #1 iPad app. It is an amazing tool for artists. Many of the artists in this festival use Procreate as well as I do. I actually I gave my niece Procreate for Christmas as well, because I think it's such an amazing tool that works for very intro level artists all the way up to the most professional. And it's so cool to see the types of things that you guys do. Nate travels around and does all these amazing demos showing the very specific things that you were just talking about. And when you're developing tools like that, how do you ideate? And how do you, when you're coming up with what's next, how do you start to get a sense of what that is?
It depends on what we're working on. Sometimes it's something really simple, like if you look at something like shapes, how do you draw a shape? In traditional computing world, you would, you'd go to your menu, you would go create shape, a shape would be on the canvas and off you would go. Starting with that problem of how do you draw a shape, but how do you do it accurately? How do you do it naturally? How can grandma just pick it up and not have to dive through menus? We always start with the problem first. Like, how can you just intuitively, take that particular action? And when we were looking at just making simple geometry on the canvas, we went through so many iterations of, different methods of invoking different menus and kind of interface menus, etc. And like when we kind of boiled it down, the essence was, man, you just want to draw a bloody circle. You know what I mean? That's what you want to do. You don't want to go through menus. You want to draw a circle. And so we came up with this idea of, well, wouldn't it be cool if you could just draw the circle and it just instantly is recognized as a geometric shape? So that was the idea in principle, but what followed from that point was like 6 months or something of pretty hardcore. I didn't know how hard it was to draw a circle, mathematically, when you're like taking in 1,000 inputs and recognizing, no, that particular person wanted to draw a circle. Turns out it's a lot harder, but we always start with the problem and try and not look at what's been done. We really want to improve things, not just kind of grab what's been done, back in the 80s and just kind of adapt it for the iPad. There's still so much, like, again, we're talking about room to grow, right? There's so much room to grow with multi-touch, with the advent of, great mobile processors, etc. There's so much to go. But yeah, always start with the problem and try and forget about the past and figure out a natural method of interaction.
I love that. I think that idea of, rather than being evolutionary on what came before, how do we revolutionize? How do we look at the new tools that are available to us and really change the landscape? Jama, I think you've been so instrumental in this. You came from a a very specific concept art career working in, at ILM and on all the big movies, and now you've found a new sort of space for yourself, diving into VR and some of the other tools that are on the cutting edge. What was part of your decision there?
Well, I don't think it was a kind of sudden transition anyway. So the reason why I was trying to dive into like different alternative routes, because I felt like James said, there's so much to explore, like what we're doing right now, it's just a beginning, and the tools are evolving. You get new input devices, like iPad was one of them, then VR came out. It's all very interesting because the way you tackle problems and the way you can just do stuff differently, like VR is so gesture-based, which we never had because we always had just a mouse, right, or a pen. But now we have this device where we can move around things. It's really fantastic. I mean, like, I would probably mention something that I think I struggled with and where a lot of artists could struggle with. When you're starting out something, it doesn't look like super amazing straight away. I mean, I've been knowing Procreate for a long time, and I remember first versions were okay, but they were not exactly where it is right now, because obviously you guys needed some time, and also the pen was not nice. Even like previous version of iPad, people are laughing at each other when the pen is sticking out of the iPad. It's just like, what? Like, you don't use it like this, right? But this is where I think it's very easy to critique something, like, hey guys, you don't have this, you don't have that. Well, just give them some room, like that's, I think it's even like I'm not a developer, but I imagine this hurts even more than just pure mathematical level of problems. When people, like, a lot of people are encouraging, but also people artists are conservative. We are very conservative. We don't like changes, right? We love our mouse. We love our like little keyboard. That's it, right? It's really hard. So I guess like what I did, I was always trying to stay very open-minded. Like there's always room to improve, and always like. And that's how it all started rolling, and even with Procreate, like with each version, they're getting better. Now there are other programs that are just starting out, but they show the potential, like that's why like I felt like they need people like me to help them out, to actually show that this is something very useful and there's a lot of potential behind it. Of course, as a business model, some apps are not as good as others, they die out. But I guess like as artists, we always need to support this kind of stuff, because in the end, they're creating the tools for us, they're creating something that we can use and make money, make living out of it. So I'm always trying to support, like even something like I'm trying VR, man, some devices they make, they're so ridiculous. Like they look at the device and go like, what? Like, but then you go like, instead of going like, dude, nobody's going to use it, you go like, okay, try it out. Let's see, maybe device itself will transform into something else. But there is a potential, like for example, I've been working with Vacuum and they were trying to do like their own VR controller. And the first version they did, I was like, oh my God, this is horrible, right? But it's just the potential, like it just makes sense for them to do something really cool, and they just need some room. So that's why on my part, I was always trying to kind of see where you push it. And obviously when the developers have the same kind of direction and same roadmap on their mind, it's just slowly coming together. Yeah,
it's such an exciting time, isn't it? Where all of this is happening before our eyes. We see these changes where there was an old way of things existing in the first waves of technology and the internet, and now literally every month or every week something new comes out that solves a new problem. Max, what are some of the technological problems? I get to serve some softballs because I know you so well. But what are some of the technological problems that you see, and what are you focused on in the immediate term?
Yeah, I think for us at Kitbash, our focus is 3D and how incredibly difficult the barrier to entry for 3D is right now. It's still absolutely ridiculous that we're in 2020 and people have to understand which random checkboxes with jargon names that they have to hit for no reason other than it just won't work if you don't check that box. Or trying to figure out what the indice of refraction is. The learning curve for 3D is just too steep right now. And if we really want a lot of people to be able to take advantage of this very cool new medium, then we need to make it easier for people to do. And so I think that's really where our focus is how do we remove the technical barriers and speed up the feedback loop so that anyone who's never used 3D can build a world and share it with a friend within a day.
And what are some of the ways so far that you've seen you tackle that?
Well, first we started at Kitbash with let's create models because we can remove modeling and UVing out of that technical pipeline. Then we moved into textures and shaders, and now we're working on a lot more of those steps to try to hopefully give everyone just a single place that has every element they need. So all they have to worry about is using these tools and putting them together into something unique and being able to really just use their imagination rather than have to get bogged down in any of the technical steps.
James, do you find that's, I know the products are very different, but do you find that's a similar approach of how do we look at a problem and make something easier?
Yeah, totally. The approach is exactly the same. But what's interesting is, especially with 3D, much like any new technology that comes on the scene, like if you were to go back, a couple of years with the advent of just even the internet, not a lot of people were using it because it was a little difficult. Before we had search engines and stuff, you had to know like IP addresses or the BBS, systems, etc. And so it wasn't really accessible. And it turns out you needed to have those technological advancements to make the internet accessible, And so when we have stuff like iPhone that allowed people to carry around the internet in their pocket, that suddenly changed the entire game. And suddenly everyone's using it. And I think if you look at VR, it's something very similar where we have these early adopters with VR. There's, it's just geeks, artists who are like, holy shit, this is amazing, and they can see that potential. But until, that we need that time period to miniaturize, because at the moment, like my VR set here, you've got all the little nodes you've got to have around the place, and you've got to have the big headset and the cord, and grandma doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to. She's not going to do that. So there's so much more, I think, that needs to happen to miniaturize that tech, to get silicon to a point where we can just wear a very accessible, lightweight kind of frame. There's a lot more to go, I think, before it becomes mainstream. So but the approach, it's exactly the same. Yeah.
The hardware complications in getting, a device that is a computer and a monitor to be lightweight and not so hot is a big hurdle. I feel like one of the things that has the potential to change this is cloud computing. Jama, do you feel like that where the headsets are at now, I know the new Oculus Quest, untethered and free of a high-powered PC. Do you feel, though, that cloud computing is going to help elevate that and make the device smaller and smaller as we go?
Oh yeah, I actually am least worried about the tech itself. I mean, right now I totally understand what James you said. Like, all my old headsets are up on my shelf. Like, I just threw them away because I don't need it. Now it's all like just this simple device. It's still quite big, but it just shows you the potential. Like you said, it's already working with the cloud to store stuff. It's not processing anything yet. But potential is already there, and just like you can clearly see it with the phones, remember your first phone, it would barely fit your pocket and would feel like a salami in your pocket, right? But now it's different. Now it's just small, and I'm not worried about the tech. It will keep improving as long as they keep putting money into it. But the potential is definitely there. And the question is it going to be AR or VR? It's also debatable because AR is also fantastic because it's just being projected in front of you. But just the ability, the input device now changed. Like, for example, I'm working with Gravity Sketch guys, and what they did right now, they have application both on iPad. I don't have it in front of me, obviously. There's no way to demo it, but I will explain you how it works. So they have Gravity Sketch, which is a VR app. It's like a modeling VR app. You put your headset on, you can draw, and it's fantastic. And everything you do is 3D. But then it's also synced with the iPad app, which is drawing app. It's basically the same app, but on the screen. So basically the way it works, you draw a sketch, and you just click a button. It goes to cloud, and you put the headset on, and it's already in 3D. It's just mind-blowing. It's really fantastic. I mean, in the future, I see it's going to be all one device, where you draw and you just put the headset on and your drawing is in 3D already. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. In that AR versus VR conversation, it doesn't really matter, I think, because to me, they're kind of the same thing. It's just am I seeing virtual assets before the real world, or am I fully blacking out?
Yeah.
And so I think that eventually will be one piece of hardware, depending on who puts it in. It's interesting seeing, you talk about as long as they keep putting money into it. And I think, the biggest guy behind this from a VR standpoint is probably Zuckerberg, who has stood up so many times and said, this is the next computing platform. Max, what kind of things do you see, and what do you think he means by that when he talks about this being the next computing platform?
Yeah, I think you can see that he's making a pretty big push to take social network from a 2D to a 3D dimension, right? Facebook Horizons being the big case of that. And this idea that interacting with people on the internet is a lot better in an immersive environment. I think it's why so many people flock to video games for human connection. And it's such a great way for families to connect with each other when they're not in the same place, or friends to keep in touch, is to go run around and explore a world together and have a shared experience and create memories there. And I think that as a medium is just so much more powerful. It also creates a sense of presence with someone, rather than double tapping to hit like on something, actually feeling like you are in a place with someone else experiencing something in the moment. And so it seems like more and more that is the future of the internet, is going from a 2D dimension to a 3D dimension, and creating more immersive ways to connect with people through technology.
It's so exciting hearing this. I feel like everyone is sort of echoing the same thing. We're painting this picture of it hasn't really begun yet. And I think that from where all four of us sit, the world is shifting in this direction, and where concept art and movies are is really the foundation of what this is going to be. And I think it's such an awesome time to be in this business, because I think we're really the early adopters of what's going to happen next, as this next thing unfolds.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a statement more than a question. Well, so James, when you think about the future, and as you're going, Procreate has been such an instrumental part of the community, participating all over the place. In really, as from just an outsider's perspective, it looks like the goal is to make people happy, and is to bring authentic experiences to artists. What is the idea? What's the ethos behind y'all's participation everywhere?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We never really, we never had a business plan that was, the formal kind of business plan that went after revenue, market share, any of that kind of stuff. What we really wanted to do was just build an amazing tool that was easy to use, so that everyone could have fun drawing, painting. The whole ethos behind what we do is really just trying to do the best work that we can as developers, which, in a way we kind of see ourselves as artisans as well, in a different sphere. And what drives us is just trying to make the best possible product. And we have a philosophy that if we do a really good job, the money will come. And we've really hunkered down on that for, I think, 9 years now we've been going. And so far, so good. So I think artists have responded really well, because we don't try and screw them out with in-app purchases or gimmicks or whatever. It's a very, very simple proposition of, hey, this is a lovely tool that we put our heart and soul into, and you will buy it and you will own it. And it's as simple as that. And I think artists have really responded well to that the fact that we're not trying to look for an angle. We're not trying to get them on a subscription with that reoccurring revenue streams. We're just trying to make the best possible product we can. And I think artists have a really good bullshit meter, right? They you kind of know. And I think the fact that we've just come out honestly just trying to make the best product we can at that one-time price point, I think it's resonating within the community. And we don't see ourselves as like a faceless corporation. We really want to be involved within the community, because artists, it's our people, So the energy that we get from interacting with artists, from seeing the artwork itself, holy shit! I mean, our office lights up when Georgie or Nate find this amazing artist. It just spreads like fire, and we participate in celebrating that, the artist itself. That the energy we get from what they create fuels us to keep developing Procreate. So it's a lovely kind of cycle,
Mm-hmm. It's so organic and authentic. If y'all in the chat are not following Procreate on social media, do yourself a favor. It is just that. We light up too when we see something awesome come through there. Jama, I think on that same thought, you being an authentic artist and putting out really top level work in just about everything you do is part of what has built your name in the industry in so many different ways. When you're crafting a product, or like for instance, your new clay packs that just came out. What kind of effort, when thought process, do you put in? Because it feels like you're pushing boundaries, and so while you're trying to push boundaries, how do you navigate that with having to put a product out?
I guess I always been following just one kind of main principle. How can I make my own life easier, and how can I basically rest more? Because working, just like we started this conversation from 3D being very technical, there's still terms you read them and you watch the tutorial and you still don't understand what exactly it does, right? And my brain capacity is not that huge. Some tools, I read them and I thought, what does this mean, right? So I decided I'm gonna be simplifying everything. And if I come up with something cool that will help me to simplify other artists' life, I will just share it. And that's how I've been approaching to everything I do. For example, because I'm a strong believer, if it's less technical, then it's more creative. And it doesn't matter that it's better. Some people love technicality. I know 3D guys or VFX guys, they just love numbers. That's their passion. But obviously, I'm just I'm sharing the stuff that I'm doing from a concept artist of view. Sometimes people misread these lines. You say something and they go oh, well, technicality is great. It's great. It's for you great. For me, it's not as great as it should be. And that's why that's been my process mainly while I'm doing something. And I mean, programs are not perfect. Any program done by people, there's some room to improve, and that's why I'm trying to show people, okay, we could do this better or that stuff better a little bit, and it's just helpful on both ends. It helps people who are developing the product to push it further, and I get the tools I think I need for my workflow. So it's like a mutual transaction.
I'm sure it is quite refreshing, if I may speak for the audience here, I'm sure it's quite refreshing hearing that artists of your level still are confused about things and still have to get down and problem solve.
Every day, I wish I knew programming. I actually started as a computer engineering, but I thought my brain capacity is too small and I gave up. It's just sometimes you read something, it's well, it's simply to increase the resolution of the mesh, right? But why is it called something different, right? Just call it more polygons, less polygons. Just keep it very simple and stuff like that. But also saying that, I will say something very unpopular, but I feel like I am in the position that I can tell it. I see a lot of app fan kind of thing. When people become a fan of an app, there are fans of Procreate, there are fans of ZBrush, there are fans of 3D Code, there are fans of Blender, and they stop being very objective. They just, okay, this is my app. No matter if they screw it up, I'm not saying anything. This is a very dangerous approach because it happened with Photoshop. I know you guys are not able to talk about apps, but I am able because I'm a user, right? So nobody, Photoshop has been saying and getting worse for 10 years. People have been saying it, but not being so loud. Nothing happened. And that's why I'm being very careful, even if I love personally Blender, but when people say, am I in the cult? I say, no, I'm never going to be in the cult, or I'm never going to be in Procreate cult or any other software, because I want to say objective, because I think because of people like me, these apps will improve, because I'm not being, like I said, I'm always super positive. But if there's something not working, I go hey, please do it for me. And if you need my help, I'm willing to show it. It's just when there's this fandom kind of thing, it just becomes so non-objective. And also it's dangerous for people who are not agreeing to certain things because they can't speak out. like they raise their hand and they go like, "Hey, where is lasso in Procreate?" And they're like, "Palm slap in the head. Shut up, just paint. Why do you need lasso tool?" And I'm just exaggerating, but you know what I mean, right? It's just so hard to speak out when your voice is suppressed. That's why, like, I don't think everybody has to do that, but I think I'm in position when I can help, especially software developers, to have a unbiased, clear opinion on something, and always from positive approach. Guys, this is working, but can we do something like this, right? And that's how you push it.
Nathan Clegg in the chat asks for Maxx and JAMA, do you find it important to experiment with new tech and methods? And how would you balance that with using new tech for actual work?
I will let Maxx talk. I talked enough, so.
Yeah, Maxx, how important is it for you to experiment with new things, and can you actually use that in your workflow?
I wish I was more of an experimenter like JAMA is. Actually, I feel like the last time I really experimented with a new software was because JAMA was singing the praises of 3D Code, and I started using that for a couple projects. And it was awesome, by the way. It was very cool.
It's an interesting program, man. There's this another program that I played a couple of weeks ago. It's called Conceptor. If you don't know, I can type it in the chat. It's an app written by one guy. It's just mind blowing, man. It has some flaws, like UI is not very nice, but I just realized, man, this is genius, And like I love what Jason mentioned. He has a completely different approach. He's not trying to create another 3D code or ZBrush. He went like, why don't we do stuff like this, and just started creating something similar. But obviously, any effort will stagnate if artists don't support him. I don't think he's doing all right, but the more exposure he can get, the better chances for him to do something really, really cool. But in terms of experiment, this is probably 10,000th time I say this. I never experiment in the sake of just experimenting. I don't have time. There's zero mornings in my life when I wake up and I go okay, what shall I try, right? And I scroll down Apple Store. Okay, what is this does, right? I just don't have that luxury. But I always have problems, specific problems. For example, okay, I'm using iPad, but I'm doing a lot of technical drawing. What do I need? I need a program with perspective. What kind of options do I have? Procreate, Infinite Painter, blah, blah, blah. And then I started trying them out. For example, recently I picked up sculpting this year, and I tried them all. I started from 3D Code, which I know very well. I was like, okay, it does very well this stuff, but not good at this. And then I went to ZBrush, I went slowly to Blender, and I'm just taking notes, not written notes, but mental, verbal notes inside my head, what can we improve? And when I have a chance, I share those with community, and also then I share with developers. And I think it's a mutual transaction, they get honest feedback, unbiased feedback on something. And I'm not afraid to say this, in the end, like I said, I'm trying to be very unbiased because I do respect all the effort and I try to help, but if there's certain things that are not working well, they should be discussed, because in the end, it's going to help you and going to help me because I'm the guy who's using the tool. So.
Maxx, when developing things, how important is it, when developing products, how important is it for you to be in touch with the audience and get to really connect with who's using it?
Yeah, I think we're gonna dance around a line here to not share too much of what we're doing.
You can dance. I got faith in you.
I mean, being in touch with our community is paramount for everything we do. And even if we don't talk about the software side, if we talk about kit creation side, most of the kits that we build are because of the feedback that we get. And every time we do an update or an improvement to the kits, we put a giant list up on the board of every request we've gotten from email and social media and how many times it's been requested. And then we just have a list in the order of amount of requests, and we try to see how many of them can we hit. So I think, that type of feedback that John was talking about of giving developers or businesses that honest, objective feedback, and it doesn't need to be a negative thing, and rarely is it for us. A lot of the times it's just, hey, can you add this? Or, hey, it would be really nice if these kits were set up in this way. but that stuff is how we create our roadmap. And also we try to get it to market quickly with whatever the minimum viable update is, so that we can start to get more feedback on it to make sure we're going in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, we're building these things for artists. So working in a vacuum and just thinking that we did it the way we wanted isn't really the point. The point is to make sure that it's easy to use and gives artists all the tools that they need to be creative.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Can I add something very quickly? I also think it's worth mentioning that despite the fact that I have ideas how to develop a new tool or a new feature, I always try to telling developers I'm working with something like, hey, can we have something in that app, but in this app, it's very famous, because people are so used to, for example, coming from Photoshop, you want all the tools on iPad, just naturally, right? But then it's a new media, like James said, give them room to develop something unique, right? That's why usually the way I construct my desire or my wish list, I say, I want to do something like this, you come up with the solution, instead of demanding the same tool, which is it's doable, it's totally doable, but maybe there is a chance to develop something even better. For example, I'm working with Gravity Sketch guys from time to time, and that's exactly the way I present my ideas. I show what I want to do, pop, 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 and I go can you come up with a solution, And sometimes they come back with some crazy, unique way, which I never thought about. And that's beautiful, It's just so amazing that they get an inspiration from you and they come up with a neat, fantastic tool. And I'm totally on board with what James said. They want to do completely new things, iPad, it's a thing that have a gyroscope inside. You rotate it and the ink can flow up and down. You can do some crazy stuff, which obviously wasn't possible with just a monitor. So, right. Yeah.
And also, sometimes the simplest features have surprising hidden complexity. Again, going back to James's just example of the circle.
Yeah.
So many of these things where, as a user, you're like, hey, why not just get this one thing? It's pretty straightforward. And then on the development side, you're like, it's not. It really isn't. There's so many other factors connected to it that it really requires a lot of research, a lot of development, and the design process in general is sometimes a very long road, and a lot of the times that road is just a giant circle, and you end up right where you started, but you needed to go down that road in order to understand where you started was the right way to go.
Yeah. But Max, you know how that works, right? You get frustrated and you need to blame someone, right? So you're not right. In the end, it's not easy to build, but you get frustrated. You go oh, these guys, I know what you mean.
Ian Wagner drops a question in, and I want to tie that into my last bit here because we are short on time. Ian asks, with these new tools, everything is still technical, and how do you balance learning the technical for jobs versus being creative? And I want to add to that, and start, James, with I know there's so many young artists out here that are in this room with us, and they're looking for what might be next, or if they don't have 15 years in Maya, what do you see as the real opportunity from them for a technical standpoint and also from a creative standpoint that they could be diving in? If you have some advice to share.
Depends on where they want to go and what part of the industry they want to go. But I think one of the things that is universal is just sketching and drawing and trying to think outside of that box. And I'm not saying that because we develop Procreate, but one of the most fundamental things people can do is just to put down the ideas. Doesn't matter how you put down the ideas, whether it's a drawing, some notes, whatever, a notepad beside your bed. But I think one of the most important things is not so much the technology, is actually just that keeping that creative spirit alive and feeding that creative spirit. Once you feed that creative spirit, man, it's going to manifest itself out into any number of technological avenues. But in that sense, I'd say the technology is probably second to your own creative spirit.
That using the tools are just an avenue to push whatever.
Totally. Yeah, because at the end of the day, tech is just a means to amplify our natural and innate creativity. It's just an amplifier. It's already here, you know. And I think that's the biggest thing to really feed.
For CGMA and Maxx on that, using assets, how, you know, so much of the work that's being put out there, the time constraints are getting tighter and tighter. How do you think assets help benefit the delivery of work in that way?
Yeah, I'll jump this one off. I think what assets do is it creates a faster feedback loop. You know, if you want to build this magical place, you don't need to worry about modeling and UVing and texturing a barrel that's going to be on the street. You know, those types of things I think actually are going to kill your momentum. When really what you're trying to do is convey an idea, an emotion, a story, a mood. You're not trying to, you know, build a door or a window. And so I think that's the point of an asset library is to say, hey, here's all of the things that you have to play with. It's not about modeling or texturing. It's about expressing yourself and creating a story or an idea. And how do we make that simple enough, easy enough, that you can do it fast enough that you can start to really get momentum and feel good about what you're creating. And I think if everyone has the tools and the ability to create something at the level of ILM or Naughty Dog, then what's really going to separate people is their actual creativity and ideas. And that's the world that I want artists to be in, where they're not limited by their technical knowledge, they're limited by their ideas.
John, you want to add to that?
I would just amen, and we will pass that.
Amen. I think the continual picture we're painting here is one of it's early on in the days of digital art and where this goes and how this begins to shape the way human behavior goes as the newer waves of the internet come, is here for us as a community and everyone in the chat included to participate in that and to find your time and find the ways that you can push things forward and that you can use something to relate your creativity to someone else. I think it's such an important time that we all recognize that your voice is here and your voice matters, whether it's in a conversation like this or in the chat or on social media or in Discord where you share with this very small community. The things you say and do will have a disproportionately large effect on what comes next. And I think, if you could use this moment right now, CGMA, to say a word to the community about what you'd like them to think about as being part of this thing together, what would that be?
Well, I think like the one thing I could advise to do would be, despite all the technological part of what we do, as a person who works in the industry, I see that it all boils down to your foundation. You know, like you can get the best iPad, the best VR headset, the best assets in the world, but in the end, if you don't understand how it works, it's just a waste of energy. You know, so. Yes, absolutely. The tools help you. That's why we have forks and that's why we have knives. You know, we don't eat with our bare hands anymore, even though it looks like fun to do. We don't do it because we have tools. But obviously, we need to understand fundamentals first. That's the biggest kind of pitfall where young students fall. They learn tricks and tips, which is relatively easy to do these days with all the Gumroads and courses and stuff like that. But once you have a strong foundation, like other guys mentioned, tools will amplify your talent, amplify your ideas. That's why, and it's important to actually learn both of those because tools will amplify your foundation. Your foundation will vice versa amplify the way you use your tools. It's kind of parallel effort. Once you bring it all together, it just the sky's the limit. You know, there's so many creative ways you can do it, and I'm absolutely excited about what's coming next.
I know that we could be doing this for hours on end, and I do sincerely hope that we get to do this again very soon. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the chat that want to stay engaged with you guys. Could we just go around and each of you say how and where they can find you online? Maybe we'll start with Maxx.
Sure. Well, you can find Kitbash at kitbash3d on Instagram and Facebook and kitbash3d.com. And then I pop onto Instagram every once in a while at Max Burman VFX.
Score. And Jama, how can we keep up with you?
Oh, well, I can tell people my address. They can come over and we can have a chat.
Hey, not today. Not today. We got social distance to.
I think the best way to find me is on Instagram. It's instagram.com, Jama. I don't have my website. It's so outdated, but yeah.
And you also have giving out tutorials and stuff on Patreon, right?
Don't mention those. That's why.
We're gonna edit that part out when we put this live. And James, of course, at Procreate. Is there anywhere else that people can connect with you if they want to give you some thoughts?
I mean, yeah, at Procreate is the main method. I mean, I'm terrible with social media. I'm so busy these days. But at Cuda is where you'll find me on Twitter, mainly stalking. But yeah, at Procreate's the main method. Yeah.
Cool, awesome. And I am Banks Boutté, just at Banks on Instagram, at Banks Boutté, or Kitbash3D. You guys, thank you very much for taking the time. James all the way in Tasmania at 4 a.m. and Jama over in London and Max here in LA. I know you guys value this like I do. This online festival that Playgrounds has brought is such an incredible way for them to step back in and show up for the community. You know, it's sad that the physical events are on pause, but I think it's such a testament to Leon and Jacqueline and the team at Playgrounds that they want to do this and that they immediately turn their attention towards a free event that can bring value here to all of us. So I'm incredibly grateful to be part of this thing. It is one of the great highlights of my life to be part of this community with you all. And there's a whole bunch of really fun things going on. This festival is brought to you by, I'm going to shout them out, Firestarter, that's Speedy over here, and then Procreate, of course, is the principal sponsor. Wacom and MSI also helping this thing together. They're two different channels, and there will be really cool things going on all day long. I will be back in about an hour, I think, with another panel. And in the meantime, please stay active on the chat. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. Put in the time to make this thing something that you will be really proud to say you're part of. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining me here.
Thank you, guys.
Pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
See you all soon.
See you.
See you guys.